Hello, Google launches a competitor to TikTok. The world saw some very cool Super Bowl campaigns. All the major tech companies announced their quarter 4 year earnings. This and much more in the week that was. Let's first start with Tangi, the competitor to TikTok which Google has launched. And why is it a very smart move? Because it's a platform which is entirely focused on do-it-yourself or DIY. And we all know that it's a big trend today, whether it is in cooking or crafts or a lot of these hobbies. Do-it-yourself is something which people want information on, and they're trying to do things by themselves. And is there a platform, like one platform, where you can get all of this? Well, none which comes to my mind and which has a global appeal. So that's what Google has aimed to do, and let's see how they shape up in the future. Recently, Google announced its quarter 4 and the annual earnings of 2019, and a very interesting thing came up. Half of the money that advertisers are spending on search ads are now coming from automated bidding. Now that's a huge thing, right? And for people who are new to Google AdWords, it's basically like an online stock trading platform. And just like in stock trading, you have to look at various signals to understand at the price at which you should be quoting. Similarly, in Google AdWords, you have to be looking at the bid of your competitors, the way your ads are doing, something called the quality score and all that, right? So there are too many signals. To simplify all this, Google has made it objective driven. So basically you tell the platform what your objectives are, and the rest is taken care by the platform. Say, for example, if you're a hotelier and you know in your city there's a major conference happening, and for the next week you want to ensure that your ads are placed right on top, all above the others, so then there is a certain objective for that. If you're selling shoes, and if you know that for a certain brand you cannot go above a certain cost per acquisition, then hey, that's your objective, and that's what you tell the automated bidding system, and the system then takes care of everything by itself. Now, if you're an AdWords professional, this might prompt you to ask that, hey, is there room for professionals, bidding professionals and AdWords professionals in the future? Absolutely, they are. What this does is, what automated bidding does is that it takes away the drudgery, the manual elements of your work, so that you can focus on things which are more productive, which are more creative. And hey, ultimately there has to be a human which spells out the rules to the machine, and time and again keeps on checking and changing the rules based on the business objective and the market situation. Google's core update, which got launched sometime in the second week of January, is now fully rolled out. And so if you're a site owner, you should see if your traffic is impacted between 10th of January to 30th January. If you're a SEO, if you're trying to get into SEO, or you're currently a SEO professional, you must take note of these updates, because this is a clear signal that it's not just sufficient to do the on-page tagging and the keywords part and the tech part to rank on the website, to rank on Google. Increasingly, what Google is looking at, and that is what this update is all about, is stuff around what it calls the EAT guidelines, which is expertise, authority, and trust. So, and this is especially true if you are in healthcare or financial services or news. These are very big categories for this update actually. And even if you're not in these categories, you have to see how you can instill these qualities in your site, right? So, for example, if there is content, who is actually writing the content? Does the author have a good offline, like off the site profile? Does your site have a credible Wikipedia entry? Are you constantly getting good references from outside your site? So these are things which the search engine or Google is increasingly looking at to understand which sites to rank on the first page. It is the time when all the tech platforms, the tech biggies, announce their 2019 and last quarter of 2019 earnings, and it's just a reminder of how big these companies have become and how profitable that these companies are. Google did $46 billion in the last quarter, Facebook 21, and Twitter is far behind. I mean, we all know that Twitter is not a very mass-oriented social media platform. So Twitter is at $1 billion when it comes to the last quarter of 2019. For the first time, Google bifurcated the earnings from YouTube, and it's around $15 billion for 2019. Instagram is supposedly did $20 billion in 2019, which just shows how well Instagram is doing, because Instagram is a very new platform as compared to YouTube. Snapchat is at 218 million active monthly active users, and there's a fun fact here. Instagram actually copied the idea of stories from Snapchat. But today, Instagram is already at 500 million or 500 million users for their stories. Well, that's how life is. Unfair. Super Bowl is a much awaited event, not only for sports fans but also for people in advertising, because some of the most creative and fun campaigns get launched during the Super Bowl. Twitter does what it calls the Brand Bowl contests, wherein it awards advertisers with which have got the maximum number of retweets, the maximum share of conversation, and things like that. The most creative campaign, and that's what we want to quickly talk about, is the award for that was given to NFL. A very cool online offline, what you call online offline integration. They actually allowed their users' tweets to get printed in the official celebration confetti, which rain down on the players at the end of the game. If you're in social media, you should check out all these campaigns around of the Super Bowl, especially those which has this very cool online offline integration. The link to that will be in the blog post for this episode. Twitter publishes just published its annual 2020 event campaign. Now, this is a very useful resource to marketers, and for all those who are planning to get into web marketing, you should know that this is like events is something around which a lot of marketing, especially on social media, hinges. Right? And whether it is organic or paid. So for example, even in Twitter, there is if you look at the advertising platform, you can actually spend money around certain events, right? So there are ways in which, for example, the Super Bowl, you can show your ads to people who are talking about Super Bowl, who are using Super Bowl in their tweets and mentions, etc. So it's all well coordinated at the back end. You just have to tell the system that you want to reach out to people who are talking about the Super Bowl. Instagram has started showing subcategories of least interacted with and most shown in the feed within the followers tab. Now, what does this mean? Basically, Instagram is trying to tell you that these are the sets of follower, that you're following all these people, but these are rarely seen in your feed. So that's probably because you're not interacting with them, right? Now, this is basically an indication by Instagram it's basically asking you to unfollow them, right? Because you don't seem to be interacting with them, and hence their content is not even coming in your feed. That's the way it works. So this kind of prompting is very unlike what other social media platforms or what social media platforms traditionally do, which is basically ask people on their platform to follow more and more people. But hey, this is a result of there's a lot of government pressure, there's a lot of public glare for these social media platforms. Tinder is under a GDPR probe in Europe. Now, what is GDPR all about? Well, in a nutshell, it is about user data privacy and confidentiality, right? These are very big themes in Europe and increasingly in the US. So what GDPR mandates are things like, if you are collecting data, are you explicitly asking consent for the user? And this consent is something which should be separate from the other terms and conditions, so it's not confusing for the user. Are you allowing the user to actually go to the platform and change the level of consent? Are you keeping records of the consent which you have obtained from all the users historically? These are some of the things which GDPR mandates. And yes, if you are doing any kind of marketing activity which involves lead generation, data generation, you need to be aware, especially in Europe, right? Because you need to be aware of GDPR. So that was it. Hope you enjoyed the week that was, and if you liked the stories, be sure to follow us on YouTube and other social platforms. Thank you.